Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Men for the Win is sponsored by the Gran Group with Edina Realty. Are you looking to purchase a new home in the Twin Cities area? Or perhaps you're trying to sell your current home? Whether you're upsizing or downsizing, the Gran Group with Edina Realty will meet all of your housing needs. Contact the Gran Group by emailing thegran, G-R-A-N, group at edinarealty.com or call them by phone at 612-817-8751. The Gran Group with Edina Realty, 3-time Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine Super Agent Award winners.
On this episode, Dan and Hoges discuss the Twins' 4-game series with the Baltimore Orioles. Thanks for listening. As always, go Twins. Thanks for tuning in to Men for the Win. I'm Dan Thompson, and with me is not David Kufis. It's Andrew Hoges Hoganson. Hoges, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Pretty happy to be here. Pretty happy to do this one with you and kind of get that other guy out of the way here for a little bit so we can talk about the finer points of baseball, I suppose.
Well, exactly. And so I was thinking, because David he's swamped with work, so kind of like Prince Humperdinck. He's got so much to do. He couldn't do the podcast tonight. I believe his wife is safe. He's not framing Gilder for it, so I think he's okay in that regard, but poor David, too busy. And here's the thing, Hoges, this is what I thought was strange. He's so busy with whatever he's doing for classes, and yet he's texting up a storm during this whole series with us.
I was thinking the exact same thing. I mean, isn't the whole reason I'm filling in is because he's supposed to be studying for a quote-unquote final, and yet the text thread was alive and well with David. And I gotta say, there were so many things in that you have to talk about this. You have to talk about this. You have to talk about this. David, we've been friends a long, long time. You tell me to do something, I want to do the opposite, but you took away like all the topics. I don't even know what to do now.
I know, that's the thing. And there really is a lot to talk about in this Baltimore series. The Twins actually, what started as a promising series actually ends in incredibly disappointing fashion, I think. They split the series in Baltimore, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We should jump into the series recap.
Series recap.
Hoges, game one, it looked good in game one. How about you talk us through a little bit what happened here in game one against the Orioles?
Paddock started. He looked really, really well. I'd say this is probably his best game out there. He pitched 5 1/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 run. It was earned and 1 walk with 3 strikeouts. He looked very in control of this game. It was another one of those situations, too, where we pulled him and we put in Joe Smith, who always seems to get exactly what he needs to get whenever he gets in there. I mean, the bullpen, this is going to be a theme for the first 3 games of this series, was absolutely fantastic in this game. Larneck had a double, Correa with an RBI. I mean, it was just an all in all, a pretty solid effort by the team. The Twins ended up pulling it off 2-1, and it was a pretty slick baseball game.
All the right strokes here with Jax comes in, Pagan comes in, Duran comes in, which I'm starting to like the rhyming of Pagan, Duran. Like there's an 80s reference in there I can't quite make.
Right. We might have the Robles Rogers connection again if we got like the Duran Pagan connection.
Exactly. Wouldn't that be great? I mean, it rolls off the tongue. One thing, though, in this game that this pointed out, so Camden Yards used to have a shorter left field, and for some reason, well, I know the reason, the Orioles have given up more home runs at home, I think, than any team in baseball. It was by a large margin, if I remember right.
It's unbelievable considering what Yankee Stadium looks like, too. I mean, you got the shortest porch in the world, but yeah, Baltimore was by far, in a way, the most home runs given up in their home field.
Well, and did you see Nick Gordon, like, run into the wall now? It looks unsafe out there to play left field.
Yeah, he's going after a long fly ball. It looks like he has plenty of room, and he's running. I don't even know if he really hits a warning track. That left field bullpen out there is absolutely insane. You're absolutely right. It's dangerous. I mean, it seems like it's going to be the first of many with things happening like that. Because as a player, if you're using your peripheral vision when you're running to center field and you can see the wall, and then all of a sudden a wall appears in front of you, it just makes no sense to me.
Surely they can curve the seats there. That was really bizarre, really unsafe. Gordon is actually okay, thank goodness. But what the Twins can't stand right now, as we saw later in the series, they can't take another injury here on this team right now.
They really can't. I mean, that whole stadium design looks like they're like, okay, we need to push the walls back. And then they started pushing them back, and they're like, oh, shoot, the bullpen. What do we do with let's just leave it. Let's leave it there. Who cares? Like, I'm honestly a little surprised there's not like a little section on the other side of it that still isn't a home run, and maybe like the bullpen's a ground rule double.
Well, and I mean, baseball stadiums are quirky, right? Very often. I think for a while down in whatever it's called in Houston now, Minute Maid Park at the time had kind of like a ramp to reach the fence. But this seems just, I don't love this.
Yeah, you don't need to mess with it. And I agree with you. I love the quirkiness of baseball stadiums, but let's still make them safe. I mean, it looked awful. It's not even aesthetically pleasing.
Well, let's go on to game 2, the last real big bright spot here for the Twins. They win this game 7-2, pretty dominant fashion really here. Joe Ryan starts, not a great start, but he does enough. He goes 4 2/3, gives up 2 runs, 6 hits, 3 strikeouts, 1 walk. Not his best start. He was throwing a lot of strikes. And you know how sometimes, I love a good strike to ball ratio. I like it when guys throw strikes, but you can't.
You
throw
have to.
50...
You're a Twins fan. That's what we do. Is we throw a strike. We pitch to contact, right? Are we gonna? Exactly. Has that phrase been retired yet?
But you can't throw 57 of 81 strikes and I think expect to be unscathed, can you?
It reminded me of how Archer looked in that last Rays game that he pitched, where he wasn't awful by any sense, but he just didn't look like he had it. Although he did make one of the better plays that I've seen a pitcher make in the field in this game. I don't know if you saw it, folks, but there's a grounder up the middle, and it came right at Ryan. It actually landed him on his back. It looked like it hurt, and he flipped around. There had been a runner on first, and he ended up throwing to Correa and getting the guy out at second, and then did a little hang loose sign back into the dugout, which was absolutely incredible. I love that kid's confidence, even when he's kind of having an off day. But if you get a chance, it's a good play to look up.
It's nice to see defensive plays that are going well for this team, because this should be a good defensive team if you figure the guys that they've got out there, with Polanco playing much more comfortably at second base, Buxton in center. Kepler plays a good right. Like, there are not that many weak spots now on this team.
No, you guys talked about it a little bit in the last podcast, and I think it's a really good point. There's not a weak one among them, and I think you're seeing that confidence with these pitchers in the early on, where I know you don't want to throw 57 out of 81, but they're more willing to throw strikes and let the defense do more work behind them instead of having to kind of paint the corners a little bit more. It's more fun baseball to watch, because those are the plays when guys are making throwing errors, when, like I said last year, when they're doing their dumbs, when it's just plays that they should be making. I haven't seen that as much this year, and that's encouraging. You're still going to get the odd error, but so far so good for our defense.
Well, and perhaps the most notable defensive play in this game was actually made by Dan Gladden in the booth on a foul ball hit straight back. Corey Provis could not have been more excited, I don't think, for a play for Dan Gladden making a catch. And here's the thing that made me chuckle. Dan Gladden brings his glove to every game, and he slipped it on and he made the catch.
Yeah, and it was a pretty good catch. There's no video of it, though, which is surprising. Like, all of a sudden, I was watching the TV feed, so I didn't hear the radio until later. And, man, you could hear him, like, yelling over the TV broadcast as the fans are cheering for him. And, yeah, it was pretty great. I know we give Bremer and a lot of them a lot of grief. I got to say, since we brought it up, Provis is awesome. He's such a good radio announcer. I grew up pressing the alarm clock to my ear, listening to John Gordon. And when Provis came on, I was really like, oh man, a part of my childhood's gone. But I'm excited to have my son hopefully do the same thing and try to sneak in listening to a Twins game after he's supposed to be going to bed. And Corey Provis is a good one to be doing it.
Well, that was about the end of the bright spots here for the Twins. Game 3, gosh. We're going to talk a lot more, I think, about some spots in Game 3. The Twins lose this one 9-4, and really, it's all the action is in the third and fourth innings. The Orioles get 6 runs in the third. The Twins answer with 4, but then there's the Orioles answer that with 3, and then that was kind of it. The Twins didn't have great threats after that. Disappointing, I would say, to say the least, don't you think?
Yeah, this game, it seemed like it should have been within reach, and it just never was. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but Bundy gave up all 9 runs on 11 hits. Coulomb and Miranda came in and pitched 4.1 innings between the two of them and didn't give up a single run. So up until this point in the series, at Game 3, our bullpen still hadn't given up a single run. It was an interestingly managed game, to say the least.
We have a few questions for Rocco, I think, later in this one. The offense had a great inning. I mean, that was a great fourth inning. It was a shame that it ended with kind of a weird play. Were you watching at that point what happened there?
Sanchez was on first. We had another base runner on third, and Celestino was at the plate. Hit a rocket of a line drive in between first and second and drilled Sanchez right in the arm. I mean, he had no chance of getting out of the way. It was super frustrating because, I mean, a lot of times if there's a grounder and you're a base runner, you'll play with it a little bit, like try to get in the fielder's way, but Sanchez didn't have a chance, and so he's called out because the ball hit him. It was really an inning killer on what would have been a base hit and scored a run for sure.
Well, and I think ironically, he actually did get a base hit for it. It's kind of a weird ruling when you look at the book, but then Gary Sanchez out at second, hit by batted ball. So not something that you normally see. And like you said, nothing Sanchez could really do about it. And then after that, the Twins really don't threaten. They went 2 for 3 with runners in scoring position in this game, but it was all in that inning. And really nothing after that. Well, let's look at game 4. Man, what could have been in this one as well here, Hoges. The Twins, they lose this one 5-3, and suddenly we're looking at a split. It feels disappointing to split against the Orioles. Archer goes out. He pitches 4 innings, 2 runs, 5 hits, 6 strikeouts. But as we saw, man, the Twins got burned by the home run in this game.
The way that this game went is why I don't feel as bad about this series as maybe I should by only getting a split with the Orioles. But the Twins gave up 5 solo home runs and lost 5-3, and they in the early innings left a lot of great chances, a lot of runs on the table by guys getting thrown out at the plate. People say it all the time, solo home runs aren't going to kill you. Well, when you give up 5 of them, they are going to kill you. That was
exactly the thought I had. like that is the mantra. Like, well, you can deal with the solo home runs, but you can't deal with 5 of them in one game, apparently.
And the Twins pitchers struck out 12 batters and walked nobody. I mean, that is a recipe for success, and especially in a ballpark that has gotten bigger. But 5 solo home runs, I mean, that'll do it.
And we forgot actually. So Duran's the one, or Duran, depending on how you want to pronounce it, depending on which radio or TV announcer I think you're listening to. Duran gives up actually the 2 in the bottom of the 8th to lose it, and then I forgot Moran came in. So there's Pagan, Duran, Moran. There's such great potential here at the end of this, at the end of these games. Couple scares in this game with injuries. So Buxton, he grounded into what ended up being a double play. He looked like he kind of came up a little bit lame at first, and again, David, of course, is texting us saying Buxton's hurt, and I'm panicking, and because I wasn't following the game at that point. But he stayed in the game, thank goodness, and then hit a game-tying home run at one point.
Yeah, a bomb on a 3-0 pitch too. Like I love that guy sometimes when he swings, you're just like, that is gone before he even hits the ball. You can just tell that he's got a good read on it, and he's super exciting to watch. But yeah, anytime anything happens to him, and it's really not fair to him because a lot of his injuries are just fluke injuries, but anytime he does anything, it's like, are we going to see him out there? Are we going to see him out there? And then later, Correa gets hit with a pitch right in the hand on a check swing. More to talk about that later, but there's some concerns with this team moving forward.
All right, well, Hoges, I think we should move into, again, my least favorite segment here, the Puckett's Picks winner.
Catch 'em all, Kirby Puckett!
Puckett's Picks winner.
David keeps letting me pick first before him, according to our rules here, and I keep leaving Correa out there, and Correa ends up winning this for him. Correa has 8 points. The listeners, you picked for the listeners wisely, and Byron Buxton, he had 7, and I picked Luis Ariz, who left with COVID and had 2. So...
Well, I got to make fun of you a little bit here. The last 2 podcasts, you have talked about how well Correa is doing, and you think he's really getting there. And you spend the whole segment right before talking Correa up, and then you get to your pick, and you're like, he's for sure taking Correa, right? Because I knew that I had picked Buxton, so I knew Correa was still out there. And I was torn between taking Correa. Nope, sure enough, you take someone else, take Ariz. It's almost like you can't trust yourself with where your feelings are.
I can't because I don't want to chase. I feel like I'm chasing Correa because the moment I pick him, he's going to go backwards. But I keep picking Polanco and Ariz, and I'm getting like 1 or 2 points. And now David passed me in the season's points scored. So standings-wise, the listeners and David are tied at 3. They've passed me. And I'm just at 2, and I'm back in one of my slumps. I don't know what to do now. I don't know, Hoges. Well, let's go a more interesting one here. Let's go to Beast versus Bench.
Beast versus Bench.
Is losing fun? Is losing fun?
Hoges, I'll let you start off here. Who's your Beast?
I really struggled with who to pick for either one. There wasn't anyone who really stood out as excelling a ton in this series, and no one really had an incredibly off series. So I picked Correa for my Beast. He had, in game 1, he went 1 for 4. In game 2, he ended up 2 for 5, and with a double. Game 3, he hit a 2-run home run. He looked like he was getting his plate discipline together. He was starting to hit the ball hard, and Gleeman wrote a great article just today, I believe. I don't know if you saw it or not, but he has been hitting the ball pretty hard this entire year. He's just had some bad luck in the field, and it seems like that's turning around. And thankfully, the weather in Minnesota is finally turning around too. So, I mean, we'll talk more about his injury, but hopefully he's healthy. And with this warm weather, that kind of production will continue. So I gave my beast to Correa.
Understandable. I thought about Buxton here, but actually I'm going to go with Trevor Larneck, who I don't want to say quietly had a pretty good series, but he got on base in every game. His average now is up to 302. And, he's actually demonstrating quite clearly, and again, when the Twins need bodies, that he can be the regular left fielder. And he was. I mean, he was out there in every game except for game 2. He came in as a late substitution for Kepler because Kepler can't finish baseball games. Apparently, they don't trust him to do that.
Yeah, I think Larneck's a great pick. I honestly was a little torn between picking him. He's been playing rather well in the field. He's got quite an arm. He's hitting the cutoff guys out there too, and he's been very quietly successful at the plate. I think quiet is a good word for it because he's not always mashing home runs. To be honest, I don't think he has a home run yet this year, but he's getting on base a lot. He's showing better plate discipline. I think he's making people pitch more natural to him instead of just all sliders and no fastballs, or all fastballs and no sliders that he was getting in the last year and a half.
Yeah, he leads the team in doubles right now. And so, I mean, he's getting on base. What about your bench?
Bench was difficult too because none of our hitters really had that poor of a series. I ended up kind of punting a little bit and going with a pitcher. I went with Bundy. He gave up 11 hits and 9 runs and was basically the sole reason, along with Rocco, of why we lost game 3. So I went with Bundy.
I went with him too. You give up 9 earned runs on 11 hits and under 4 innings, and I don't know where else to look. His ERA is up to 5.76. I think maybe the small sample size for Bundy gave us an inflated sense of his quality. He is 3-2. He's got 3 wins, but not looking like a guy who may last in the starting rotation when everybody's healthy.
No, and I'm hoping, for those of you who haven't heard yet, he is out with COVID now today. I'm hoping, I guess is a weird word to say, but that maybe that was affecting him in his start for game 3. But yeah, it does seem like we may have got a little too excited with that small sample size, and maybe my preseason prediction is not going to be as far off as I was really hoping it was going to be.
You mentioned, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you're looking smarter now. Well, on that line, let's go to Rocco's Rewind.
Rocco's Rewind.
I think this was Rocco's worst decision of the season. So leaving Bundy in to pitch that 4th inning, even to stay out there in the 3rd inning in this game, I thought was very questionable. So I'm listening to this game in the car because I'm driving to a Little League game, as I am at seemingly every day of my life. And in the bottom of the 3rd, and the Orioles are just mashing on Bundy. And I'm thinking, okay, 6-0, sure. Leave the guy in for the 3rd, finish that out. And then the Twins answer with 4 in the top of the 4th. How Rocco thought that sending Bundy out for the bottom of the 4th was a good idea is beyond me. How do you do that? Your team just built some momentum and then you leave him back out there? Like, Hoges, I don't get it.
I couldn't tell you. I was watching the game live, and they were hard hit balls. I mean, he got a little hurt in the 4th inning on some defense and a weird bounce on the throw home, but he was getting hammered. Hard line drives everywhere. It was blatantly obvious that you do not send that guy out there in the 4th inning, especially with the Twins scoring 4 runs to make it a ball game again. I understood his previous start when he kind of got rocked against the Rays and they just let him in there to chew up some innings, but this wasn't that. Like, this game was within reach and he ended up giving up all 9 runs. I couldn't agree more. I don't know what Rocco was thinking there. It made no sense.
And again, if the Twins don't score the 4 runs in the top of the next inning, I'm fine with him staying out there. You're down 6-0. Half the game is over. I can get it a little bit, but at the same time, if you believe in this roster, like clearly Rocco does, and you think that they could come back and score 4 or 5 runs, and again, as we talked about earlier, that inning could have rallied even more. But then after that, the Twins just don't threaten, and it's almost like the batters thought, well, we did what we could.
Yeah, it took the life out of them. And it wasn't like our bullpen was overworked at that point in time either. It was mind-blowing. I don't get it.
Well, what about you? What's your Rocco's Rewind?
So this is something that I hesitate to bring up because I don't want to sound like an old curmudgeon, but
that you'll be fine. You'll fit in for David just perfectly there.
I'm questioning the scheduled off days. There are times that we've seen this year where Rocco has put guys on the bench for it's been a day that they're not going to play, and there is no way that they will ever come into the game. Buxton was out in game 3, and there were plenty of opportunities where it seemed like a pinch hitter would be a good chance to get him up there, and you didn't see him. Back in the White Sox series, Correa was on the bench for one of those games, and he had about 7 opportunities to pinch hit Correa at the end of the game. I can't believe believe I'm saying this, but these guys are making a lot of money to play 162 games. And I understand Rocco's theory of resting guys, and I think it does play very well in that clubhouse, but you gotta win games. So I don't know. I feel like I'm arguing with myself about how I feel about this one, but it's frustrating to watch a game when you're like, we got this guy sitting on the bench. It's the 8th inning. Get him in there. But I don't know.
No, I think I agree with you in the sense that if you're going to have Byron Buxton and Correa sitting on your bench and it's the 7th or the 8th inning and it's close, why aren't they coming out? I mean, surely they are your best hitters. They're going to be better than whomever's up there. You got to find a way, and you have the roster flexibility to make that fit. Nick Gordon plays every position, it seems like. Luis Ariz plays all over the infield. I don't understand how you can't make those pieces work. Well, let's go ahead. We have Minnesota's moments here that actually concern the same player.
Minnesota moment.
How about you? You go ahead with your. Well, maybe I should go with mine because it's a little bit more positive here.
Yeah, you go first.
So Jose Miranda, who I don't know if you heard this, Hogs, but he's related to Lin-Manuel Miranda. Did you hear that story going around?
No, there's no.
Do you know that he's not going to throw away his shot either? Oh my gosh! Is there a more obvious quote that can? Anyway,
it's a great one.
So Jose Miranda comes in, gets his first major league hit. It's an RBI. What a moment for him. Really cool. And I think, here's the thing. We're going to see a lot more of Jose Miranda, I think, for at least a month or two. Don't you think?
I think we are for sure, with Sano being out with a torn meniscus and he's getting surgery on that. But yeah, I agree with you. There's nothing more fun with watching major leaguer's first hit. I mean, you got his family that was in the stands and they're just going crazy. All the players on the bench going crazy. The part that made me laugh is every single one of them was having like an aneurysm about, hey, we need to get the ball off the field. I'm like, I think they know. I mean, literally all of you are about ready to run onto the field and grab that ball. But yeah, that was a great moment. I'll take it a little more negative, and I don't really mean to be throwing Miranda under the bus here, but getting thrown out at home when Buxton had the grounder where they overthrew the ball to first and Miranda was on second, tried to stretch it into going home with Watkins sort of sending him home. I part of it seems like Miranda was just like Gladden said it on the broadcast where it's a young guy really trying to make an impact in the major leagues and seeing an opportunity, but you got Correa who's been hot coming back up. I mean, you don't want to make that out at home plate when you have the top of your order coming up. And that's where you need your third base coach to just lay down in front of him so that he's not going home. So I put it on both of them. But
that's asking a lot for Tommy Watkins to actually do his job properly there.
It's so frustrating. I mean, this is the third time now where we have a legitimate beef with and this impacted the whole game. I mean, that's the reason I chose it for my Minnesota moment, because if we come away with the victory in this game, you win 3 out of 4 and your only loss is Bundy giving up 800 runs, you feel really good about yourself, but that just destroyed that rally. Correa ended up grounding out, and that was the end of the inning. We had the bases loaded and no outs, and we got 1 run.
I've watched a lot of 8 and 9-year-olds playing baseball. Yeah, maybe you send them there, right? When they have to make the throw and they got to get the tag on, but These are professionals, and they're not the Tigers or White Sox. So I think, we can probably rely on the Orioles to play a little bit of defense here. And like you said, that changed the whole tenor of that game.
Watkins is changing my entire opinion of how I feel about third bases coach, because I always used to be the guy who was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's be aggressive. And this entire year, it's like, no, not that aggressive.
No, and it just never feels like he's been wrong seemingly every choice. And maybe we're being unfair. I'm sure there are other plays where he's sending them, but gosh, it doesn't feel like that.
Maybe his whole thing is he had that Tigers game and the White Sox game where we basically just ran around the bases and watched the other team throw, and Watkins is like, let's keep doing this. This is great.
Put pressure on the defense. Yeah. Well, let's move into Mauer's musings here.
I just don't know how it can get any better.
Mauer's musings.
So Ryan Jeffers hits a tie-breaking home run in Game 2. Big moment for the Twins. My question is Ryan Jeffers going to make us forget about Mitch Garver?
I think yes, because he's young and he has that power and he's showing that ability. It seems like he's melding into this team. I'm more okay with it than I was at the beginning of the year. And I don't hate with Gary Sanchez out there too. It seems like he is coming into his own a little bit more too. But yeah, Jeffers may make us actually forget about Mitch Garver.
While we're talking about Mitch, so we should check in. I think David always likes to check in on Mitch Garver. So he's played in 21 games so far, 85 plate appearances. He's batting 189 with a slugging of 311 and an OPS of 593, which I gotta think Jeffers is doing better than that.
Yeah, Jeffers is batting 220 with an OPS of 754. So we're looking fairly similar right here.
Well, and are you a pitch frame guy? Like, do you believe in the power of pitch framing?
I used to, but like maybe it's just me, but it seems like it has gotten unbelievably aggressive this year. Like, you'll see guys that have to stand up and grab the ball, and then they're trying to frame it. I think umpires now are kind of taking the opposite approach where they're like, no, if I saw you move that ball, I don't care if it was right down the middle, that's a ball now. So I think I used to be, but I mean, let's be honest, it's all going to go away in 1 to 2 years anyways when we have the automatic balls and strikes.
And maybe this is our moment. You know who must have been a great pitch framer? Joe Mauer.
Joseph Patrick Mauer. We have to bring him up. I'll be honest with you, Dan. My son's name is Joe, and he's not named after Joe Mauer. First ballot Hall of Famer. David, anytime you want to talk about this, you compare Joseph Patrick Mauer's numbers against every other catcher in the Hall of Fame, and they are in the top 4 in almost every single category. That man deserves it.
So I was doing some digging for a later segment about the Reds, because the Reds are terrible. But they have Joey Votto, and Joey Votto is brought up as being a first ballot Hall of Famer all the way in some sense. Now, Mauer's numbers are not quite as good as Joey Votto, but here's the thing. Joey Votto never played catcher. Joe Mauer spent half his career playing, I would argue, the hardest position to play in the field. Got to have more love for Joe.
Oh, you have to. For a guy to produce as well as he did as when he was a catcher, it's unprecedented. I mean, he was batting .394 at the All-Star break one year. I mean, you look at his MVP numbers, they were insane. People want to bash him for not hitting homers. So what if you're getting on base? I mean, that's why he grounded into so many double plays, because he always put the ball in play.
Wasn't that one of David's comments actually in our thread today? I think
it was. That's why I keep coming back to it. It just got me riled up when I read it again. I'm like, well, that means he was a great hitter. That's why he grounded into so many, and he didn't have Buxton's speed. The other thing about Mauer too that I just feel like needs to be mentioned is he played incredible defense. David loves this phrase, so I got to say it. Do you remember when he reached around the backstop and caught that foul ball? I mean, wow.
Who could forget a fine moment like that from Joe Mauer? Well, we can't talk too much about Joe. We gotta move a little bit forward here. Let's go. Oh, we haven't even talked about your musing here. We've been spending so much time talking about the catchers here. What's yours?
Oh, my musing is on a much more depressing state of affairs. I'm worried about the state of this team going forward. Correa's injury sounded like it wasn't great. Jace Tingler in the postgame show said that it's a contusion on his right middle finger. He had trouble getting his batting glove off and squeezing objects after the game. He's getting a CT scan in Minnesota on Friday. So hopefully we hear good news, but it's just frustrating when that guy seems to be kind of coming into his own. And if he's hurt, what does this team look like? And my other musing is there's a lot of guys with COVID too, and Kepler was sick, so there's another bug going around too. Last year we got a little bit derailed when COVID hit, and are you worried about this team? Like, can we sustain another 10-day absence for some guys with some sickness?
Well, that's a good point, because I think, so it's Arise and Bundy and Rocco, at least as of now, who tested positive for COVID, and they have to stay in Baltimore. I don't even think they can come back with the team.
Yeah, and with Kepler being sick, and I heard there's more other people with the traveling party that I mean, even Corey Provis was out sick tonight, so it'll be interesting to see.
I am a little bit worried about that too. You made a really good point, because that did derail their season last year. So they have to play. I shouldn't say have to play, but they come home to a pretty important homestand, right? They play the A's, they play the Astros, and then they play the Guardians.
The White Sox seem to be kind of getting it together a little bit. I mean, I know they're 3.5 back now, so yeah, I'm worried about this team seems like it's really coming together and gelling and playing really well. I hope that this doesn't put a wrench into those plans.
Well, let's grade this 4-game series.
Series grades.
I'm going to let you start, and I'm just going to piggyback on your grade here.
I was torn with this series grade because a split with the Orioles is bad, but they played very well in games 1 and 2. Game 3 felt like an anomaly, and game 4 tonight felt like it could have gone either way. So I gave them a C. I think I'm being a little nice with my grading here, but I went with a C.
This is one of those series that I think we may look back on as being a very important turning point in this team for many reasons, right? We could see the outbreak of Miranda here. We could see how they were decimated by injury. We could see, who knows if Buxton now might need to take a day off after, seemingly being uncomfortable with his knee. I went with a C as well. I almost wanted to go lower. I think that was more recency bias, though, losing these last 2, because this felt like a series that they were going to win 3 out of 4, almost no question.
Totally agree with you. This really could be a turning point in the season. It could be something that we look back and be like, oh, we got through that. The next week was a little rough, but we made it through. Or it could be something where one thing kind of leads to another.
Well, I want to go into Herbie's headline here, a feel-good Herbie's headline.
I don't know, Jack. It looked like Herbeck pulled him off the bag.
Herbie's headlines.
So, did you see this video with Aaron Judge hitting a home run in Toronto?
I did. And even though he's a Yankee, these are moments that you just have to love as a baseball fan.
So you have, how old, do you have a son?
I do. I have 2 kids. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old, both boys.
Oh my gosh. So to me, as I have 3 boys myself, and this is just a heartstrings. Well, I don't know that I can talk about it, Hoges, without tearing up. Can you try to walk us through here what happened here in Toronto?
It's a little tough for me too. So Judge blasts a home run to the second deck in left field, just an absolute goner. And a guy catches it and instantly turns around and hands it to a Yankee fan. He had to be about 8-9 years old, something like that. And the kid just loses it right away. Just starts crying. He's so happy. He's got a Yankee ball cap on and the Yankee shirt. It brought me back to when I was a kid, of just those moments when you're in the stands and you just see something crazy like that happen. And so excited. I brought my kid to one game last year to go see Shohei Ohtani, and he's a little too young still to obviously really take it in. But even this year, I get every single time I'm watching baseball, he goes, "Daddy and Joe go to baseball game, see Buxton, Buxton." I'm like, oh, that's my boy. There we go.
That's so good. Yeah, and for me too, it was the moment after that. Actually, I'm going to bring up Joe again. So my oldest son, when I think it was his 4th birthday, we got to go down onto the field before the game as part of one of those season ticket holder things, and he was able to actually meet some of the Twins players. Actually, Kyle Gibson spent a little time talking to him. And then he got a signed bat later from Joe Mauer. It says all the best. And then I couldn't help but think of this. And the best part of the story to me too, though it's hard to beat that Toronto fan being what a great sportsman to look around and give it to that kid.
Absolutely.
But then Aaron Judge learns of this and then invites the boy and his dad and the Blue Jays fan down to meet him before the next game. And that video is great too, because then the little boy can barely even talk to Aaron Judge. My gosh.
Think about the week that kid had. I mean, he will talk about that for the rest of his life. And it's so cool to me. I want to hate on the Yankees all I possibly can, but it's so cool to see Major League ball players see something like that and go out of their way to acknowledge that moment and really lean into it. And it's cool. I mean, that's why it's the world's most beautiful game.
All right. Well, before we start tearing up here, we got to move into Puckett's picks.
And we'll see you tomorrow night. Puckett's picks.
Hoges, Puckett's pick. You get to pick for the listeners here. Maybe not so obvious now.
If you would have asked me yesterday, I would have gone with Correa, and I may have gone with Buxton if I couldn't pick Correa, but both of them I have too big of question marks. I'm going to go with Trevor Larneck. I'm going to go with the quiet doubles leading Minnesota Twins player. So Larneck, you got this. Keep it up, boy.
I go next here. I'm going to have to go with Jorge Polanco, because I'm questioning. This agonizes me to no end here, because now I'm leaving Buxton potentially there for David, but I don't know that I trust that Byron Buxton is truly healthy here either. I think he's going to get a day off, and I'd rather have the sure bet to get 3 games in this Oakland series.
And Buxton's been striking out a lot too, so those negative points can come back to haunt you.
And you know what's funny? So I'm looking at the list that David just sent in. Neither of our guys are on his list.
Oh boy.
And he's going with Buxton. I'm not going to hear the end of this on the next episode of Hoges for leaving Buxton out there. I don't know.
Larneck and Polanco, we're really counting on you right now. We both can't listen to David anymore. I might have to delete that thread if Buxton ends up doing a lot better than those guys.
Well, Hoges, this is your segment here. It's the David and Dan's Dumbs. I honestly don't remember whose dumb you're supposed to point out, if it's mine or David's, so I'm going to let you pick.
Well, I think David's whole theory was that I'm supposed to point out whoever I'm not on the podcast with, but he was just getting after me so much that I had to rip you for Gibson last time that I just no, I can't have it. I did the research. I got to go, but I'm going to go with
just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
David's Dumbs.
In the Boston Red Sox series, and I know that I'm kind of doing a little bit of a callback here, but he said this game was a playoff game, and that was the kind of intensity that it had. It was the 3rd series of the year in a 162-game season. I'm sorry, David. It's not a playoff game atmosphere, and I know we've been hurt. I know it's 18 in a row, but you can't just take a random game in Boston and call it a playoff game and give it that kind of meaning. So yeah, David, do better.
Well, Hoges, I really appreciate you filling in. Are you a Seinfeld guy too?
I did like that quote a lot. I think that's great. I haven't watched as many episodes as I maybe should have, but it is great TV when you just need to wind down and you can flip on a random episode and it's great. But yeah, it was fun talking about Jerry tonight. I'll be honest with you.
It was fantastic. We won't need to decide who's George and Elaine in this relationship here.
That's true.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and send us out here, Hoges. Folks, if you like what you hear, please do tell a friend. You can follow us on Twitter at Min for the Win. You can find our Min for the Win Facebook page as well. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you're notified when new episodes are available. If you could leave us a rating, that would be great. A reminder, too, that episodes are now available on our YouTube channel. And if you could drop us a like, a subscribe, a comment, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you for listening. And as always, go Twins.
That'll wrap up another episode of Men for the Win, a podcast hosted by David Kufis and Dan Thompson, two avid fans who appreciate well-played baseball, especially when it's done by the Twins. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, go Twins.